For a split second, I thought that I'd forgotten these. Super important. I had the DJI, I had the mic so that the audio is decent. And then I thought, where's the SD card? But I'm so happy that I did bring it with me. When you launch a landing page, when you publish a landing page, and then you run some ads, the ads give you so much feedback. Even if you get 0 conversions, you get so much feedback of what's working, what's not working, what keywords need to be in there, what keywords are doing no work for you. And you realize that there is an audience gap. And what that means is that you launch a product, an idea, and you have this audience in mind, you have this buyer persona in mind, and then you see the analytics and it turns out that the buyer persona is a completely different person. So there is this audience gap that you get to identify once you start doing some tests. So based on that, we polished the copy. The only goal here is test, get information, test your hypotheses, challenge your assumptions. That's the goal here. I'm just trying to get as much information as possible. Every single test that you run gives you important information. And in this case, what this important information has told me is, have you thought about differentiation? Have you thought about a USP, a unique selling proposition that will make people want to buy? That will be compelling enough for people to choose you over the other 1,000,001 brands out there. So another important thing we did was to read some case studies. And the reason why that is so important is because, first of all, I said I was going to do that last week. So if you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, you're kind of not delivering on the promises that you make to yourself. So first of all, the one thing I said I was going to do this week was read some case studies, and I did that. I read the case studies for several brands. 3 of them were the most important ones, and it gave me a lot of clarity on how these brands went to market, why each one of those is different from the other, and then a keyword that was relevant for each one of them. And that keyword has a lot of weight and a lot of power in helping people decide which brand to choose. So I was also thinking about, what's that one word for our brand? So I'm not going to say which brands these were, but for one of those brands, the word was creators, and social and creators. For another brand, the word was science, scientific, data-backed, data-based, all of that, or data-driven and scientific. And then for the other brand, it was rebel. That was the word. So rebellious and breaking the mold and being bold and all of that. So I don't even have to tell you which brands these are for you to understand they are very different from each other, which means they are compelling to a different target market. And when you give your target market, when you give your audience a reason to choose you, when you give them some piece of identity that they can attach themselves to, or that they can use to become part of what you're building, you're giving them a huge reason to choose you. Maslow's pyramid of needs. Like, you've probably heard of this pyramid, you probably know the thing, and so on. But the reason I've been thinking a lot about this is because you need to understand where your customer is at, because you're going to have to meet them where they are at. So if you are creating your messaging or your positioning around a level in which your customer isn't at, they're not going to feel identified. They're not going to feel as if you're talking to them. They're not going to feel as if you have said something that's of interest and of value for them. So you need to understand what part of this pyramid is your target audience in, and understand where your brand, where your product, where your service comes in on that. Are you going to be the product or service that helps them get from one level to the next? Are you going to be the product or service that makes the level that they're in better? Like, what are you going to be for them? What role are you playing in their lives? What chapter are they in? Are you helping them go from chapter 1 to chapter 2? Like what role are you playing? You really need to understand that, because otherwise you're not going to bring in anything interesting for them. When it comes to this Maslow pyramid, I'm going to go back to something that I said when I was in a class in university. So the teacher asked, does anyone know what the Maslow pyramid is? Raised my hand and said, yes, it's blah, blah, blah. Now she responded, yes, but no. And I, at the moment, completely disagreed with what she said. And to this day, I still completely disagree with what she said, which I don't remember word by word, but it was something along the lines of every level holds the same weight of importance. And the reason why I disagree with that statement, with the statement that she made, was because you don't think about the level at the top when your needs from the level at the bottom are not covered. So if you've ever gone through a health issue, you'll know that when you're feeling at your worst, when you don't have energy to even send an email, when you don't have the energy to get up and do anything, the only thing that you want is to feel better. The only thing that you want is to have that level of energy to do the basic things that you would be able to do in your daily life. You're not thinking about, should I pivot my career? Am I where I want to be? Have I achieved the goals that I want? Like, you're not thinking about those things because your basic need of having a healthy life is not covered. So that's why it's so important to understand where your audience is at, because you can't come to them talking about X thing that they're not thinking about, that they're not concerned about, that they're not worried about, that they don't care about. You need to think about what are they concerned with at this moment? What are they worried about today? What is this problem that they have that I can help them solve? And when you start thinking about these things, you start creating some level of empathy for your target audience. And once you have that level of empathy, you can talk to them. But don't start just blah, 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 blah if you don't know what problem they have, if you don't know what they're interested in. Think about your audience first. Think about this person that you're serving first. And I think this is one of the basic principles of marketing. Think about your audience, have empathy. Understand what they want, understand what they need, understand their problems. If you're just talking and talking and talking, as I just mentioned in a recent newsletter, they will leave because you're not saying anything that's of interest to them. You want to say something that's relevant for them. And if you make your conversation and your messaging interesting for them and relevant for them, they will show up. If you're just talking and talking and talking without saying anything that's relevant for them, they will leave. And they don't have to give you any explanation. So they will just leave with no explanation at all.